In the dim light of a forgotten attic, Elise discovered an ornate locket nestled among dust-laden boxes. Its intricate design gleamed with an unsettling allure, drawing her closer. She could feel an inexplicable connection pulsating from within, as if it held whispers of long-buried secrets. The locket belonged to her late grandmother, a woman who spoke of the dark family history in hushed tones, warning Elise never to disturb the past. Curiosity got the better of her as she unlatched the delicate clasp, and the air thickened with a sense of foreboding. The moment the locket opened, a chill swept through the attic, suffocating her with a weight she couldn't shake. Inside, a faded photograph of a strange woman stared back with eyes that felt too alive. That night, as Elise lay in bed, her dreams morphed into vivid nightmares. The woman's face loomed closer, no longer a picture but a presence, whispering her name in a melody that echoed through the corridors of her mind. Each subsequent night, the whispers grew bolder, more demanding, as though the locket had unleashed a connection that twisted reality into something far more sinister. Days turned into a blurred haze, warped by sleepless nights and the incessant whispers that seemed to invade her waking moments. Friends began to notice her fraying edges, the way shadows clung to her like a shroud, and how her laughter faded into a distracted silence. Elise tried to hide the locket, bury it among the relics of yesteryear, but it was as if the very object was tethered to her soul. The photographs in her home began to shift, distorted reflections of the woman from the locket, their expressions growing steadily more menacing as if they were aware of Elise's struggles. Determined to rid herself of this curse, Elise delved into her grandmother's past, searching for answers that had long been shrouded in mystery. Each revelation revealed a cycle of madness and despair, the locket a cursed heirloom passed through generations. As she pieced together the dark legacy, the whispers transformed into screams, overwhelming her with their urgency. In the end, Elise realized the locket wasn't merely an object, but an anchor to a malevolent spirit that thrived on her fear. As she stood on the precipice of her family's haunted history, the realization dawned that it was too late to escape its grasp, and the woman in the locket had finally claimed her. Inheriting an old grandfather clock was never part of Lila's dream for her future. Yet here she stood in her late grandmother's dusty attic, staring at the ornate timepiece, its surface carved with delicate motifs of twisting vines. She felt an inexplicable pull towards it, the clock emanating an eerie, almost sentient presence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, Lila's fingers brushed against the cold wood, and a faint whisper tickled her ear, urging her to listen. The clock had not kept time in years, but somehow it felt alive, as if every tick and tock held secrets meant only for her. As days turned into weeks, Lila became increasingly obsessed, spending every evening beside the clock, listening intently. Each night she heard soft murmurs, indistinct yet persistent, calling her deeper into a world she couldn't fully grasp. She began to record the voices, piecing together fragmented words that hinted at past sorrows and buried family secrets. Each revelation twisted her understanding of her heritage, unraveling a web of deceit, loss, and betrayal woven generations deep, leaving her feeling unsettled and increasingly paranoid. Gradually, Lila's life became a shadow of itself. Friends noticed her withdrawal, the haunted look in her eyes reminiscent of someone unhinged. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, merging with the rhythmic ticking that now filled her mind. She was losing sleep, consumed by the clock's revelations, convinced that her family had hidden something within its gears. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. The clock held the restless spirits of her ancestors, trapped in a loop of regret, and it aimed to pass that burden onto her, beckoning her to become the next architect of their tragic history. One fateful evening, Lila resolved to confront the clock, determined to silence the voices that plagued her. As she opened its creaking cabinet, an overwhelming wave of darkness poured out, enveloping her in an icy grip. The whispers transformed into chilling screams, echoing of pain and despair, as the clock's hands whirled violently backward, dragging her into a void where time ceased to exist. In that moment, Lila understood this heirloom was not a legacy to be cherished, but rather a curse, binding her to a past she could never escape, forever intertwined with the restless souls yearning for release. In the dim light of her small apartment, Clara found a peculiar mirror at a thrift store, its surface cracked but undeniably charming. She placed it in her bedroom, thinking it would add character to the otherwise mundane walls. However, each time she passed by, she felt an unsettling chill, a sensation that something stirred behind her reflection. But when she turned, nothing was there. Over time, the cracks began to shimmer, as if the mirror had a heartbeat, pulsing softly with an energy that seemed to thrum with her own. Late one night, as she prepared for bed, Clara caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror. It was fleeting, like the flicker of a candle, but her heart raced at the realization that the figure didn't match her own. She leaned closer, her breath fogging the glass, and examined the outline of a woman dressed in shadows, her expression a twisted parody of Clara's own. The woman smiled, a slow, sinister curl of the lips, and Clara stepped back, her pulse quickening as she felt a deep-seated terror wash over her, drowning out reason. Days turned into weeks, and Clara became obsessed with the mirror. The figure began to emerge more vividly, whispering secrets in a voice that echoed her deepest fears and doubts. It taunted her, reminding her of failures, regrets, and the isolation that surrounded her like a shroud. Clara fought against the allure, trying to ignore the mirror's call, but the whispers were intoxicating, leading her down a path of madness where she began to question her own sanity, blurring the line between reality and the mirror's dark realm. One fateful evening, driven by curiosity, Clara reached out to touch the glass, feeling its icy surface against her fingertips. In that moment, the mirror rippled, the woman's smile widening as Clara was drawn forward, her reflection now fading into the depths of that sinister world. As she vanished into the void, the mirror's surface settled, reflecting an empty room, the silence thick and heavy, save for a new whisper that carried through the stillness, a voice soft and deadly, repeating Clara's name, as though inviting her to join this new dark reality forever. The house was unassuming at first glance, a simple two-story structure with peeling white paint and warped wooden steps leading to the front porch. Lydia had inherited it from an uncle she barely remembered, a man whose life was shrouded in quiet obscurity. From the moment she stepped inside, her chest tightened with a strange, nameless anxiety. The air was still, not just physically, but emotionally, as if the house itself held its breath. The rooms were clean, yet devoid of any personal warmth. Every corner seemed a little darker than it should have been, and the tiny creaks in the floorboards followed her movements, whispering accusations she couldn't quite decipher. That first night, she awoke to the sensation of being watched, an oppressive, almost palpable force pressing on her chest. The room was pitch black, but she could feel something in the corner where the moonlight failed to reach. She told herself it was exhaustion, the weight of moving and unpacking, but the feeling lingered long after she'd turned the bedside lamp on. Over the next few days, she noticed subtle oddities. Doors she was sure she'd closed left ajar, the faintest scent of smoke in a house where no fire had burned for decades, and a persistent ticking sound she could never locate. Lydia decided to investigate, pushing past the creeping dread that blossomed in her mind. She scoured the attic, peeling back layers of dust-covered junk, and found an old diary tucked inside a tin box. The entries were erratic, written by her uncle in an untethered scrawl. The journal revealed an obsession with the house itself, pages filled with fragmented thoughts about shadows that breathe and hungry corners that seemed to consume him. His final entry was barely legible, but chilling. The house is patient. It only needs one. A creak broke the silence as Lydia slammed the tin shut. She froze. It came again, growing louder, as if the house were shifting, groaning in protest at her discovery. That night, as she lay in bed, the house seemed to come alive. The walls moaned, floorboards groaned, and the air thickened into a suffocating weight. She felt the bed sag, as if something was sitting at the edge where her feet should be. Paralyzed, she strained her eyes and caught the faintest glimpse of movement, fluid and unnatural, like oil sliding across a surface. The diary's words hammered in her mind. It only needs one. She wanted to scream, but her lungs refused to work. Slowly, impossibly, the weight crept up the bed, its presence pressing against her chest until her heartbeat was the only sound left. When it finally stopped, the silence felt eternal. But something deep inside her knew she was not alone anymore.